¿Qué estás jugando?
Oh, I'm not playing anything. I'm sentence mining and practicing Czech.
A ver.
Oh, it's easy. I can use this button to turn on and off subtitles, I can go back and forth, and if I want, I can press this button to make an Anki card for me. Totally automatic.
¿Ahora sí estás jugando?
Oh, no, I'm studying Anki, the cards that I just made.
Oh, a ver.
Paweł budeš sebe drsnej, protože ona přesně ví, jak na tebe, rozumíš?
Hey there! Sentence mining has been a recommendation for immersion learners for quite a while now, but there aren't a lot of good and up-to-date tutorials that are on the internet. So, this video is me doing that. Right here I have a Czech TV show that I could be watching. Oh look, there's a word that I want to mine. So I double click it, I learn what it means, and I go, yeah, I want to mine that. So I press this button here.
To byl teda pěkně blbej for, to ti řeknu. Jaký for?
It automatically mines everything. Then if I look in Anki, it includes the word, the example sentence, the definitions, an image, and even the audio that I can replay. And that was all in just a couple seconds, and now this card will show up in my Anki rotation in a few days. Sentence mining is a really useful activity for a bunch of different reasons. It helps you focus on your immersion, it helps you think about the language and the learning process, you have a sense of accomplishment as you build up more words, and you learn the words that are most important to you from what you're immersing in. And there's a bunch more things, but I'm going to leave it there. Technically, sentence mining is anything where you save sentences or words from your actual immersion material. So, writing down words in a notebook with a pencil is a form of sentence mining. If you're not that technically inclined, that's actually what I recommend you do. Get something like Language Reactor to easily look up words and then save things that you find in a notebook and use the gold list method to review. However, if you want something that's a little bit more high-tech and streamlined for your sentence mining, then you're going to have to do a little bit more setup. There just aren't a lot of good all-in-one options out there. I'll walk you through everything, but I am going to warn you that it might be a little bit more technical than some people will want to stomach. There are a couple of decent options if you want to just pay for something and have it work. Migaku, for example, is all about sentence mining and interactive immersion. I used their service a couple of years ago for Spanish and it was really great. I haven't used it since their massive redesign, so I'm not going to vouch for anything, but definitely check that out if it sounds interesting to you. And if you're learning Korean specifically, I need to mention Kimchi Reader. I've talked to several different Korean learners who've told me that it's the main reason they continued sentence mining for a long time. It makes it so easy. And it's not even just a reader, there's other features as well. That's just part of the name. And then for all you Japanese learners out there, try checking out Iago. It only works on Netflix, Disney Plus, and YouTube, but it's very seamless and it's actually free to install. However, if you're studying a different language or you want a wider variety of streaming services available, or you just want to use free tools, you're going to have to get some things set up. So let's go through that now. But just to be clear, this will be a little bit technical. But if you're uncomfortable or unconfident with technology, manually making Anki cards or using the gold list method is probably your best bet. To make our sentence mining setup, we're going to need three different parts. A way to save and review our cards, we're going to be using Anki for this. A way to actually create our cards in the first place with definitions and words and that sort of thing. There's two main options for this, Yomitan or VocabSiv, depending on what language you're learning. Each of them have pros and cons, but we'll go over that in a second. And then the last thing is ASB Player, which is going to let us connect to our media and save the audio and images from that. After I cover all these, I'm going to show you a couple more tips and tricks, like adding generated audio and using external controllers or improving your workflow. Let's start with Anki. I'm assuming that you already have the program installed and it's ready to go. If you need help doing that, there's a tutorial in the description below. But you should see this screen. We're going to click on Tools and then Add-ons, and then we're going to hit Get Add-ons, and we're going to paste in this code. This is for Anki Connect, which is going to allow Anki to talk to other programs on our computer. So now I have Anki Connect, that's all I have to do, and then you should also restart Anki to get it going. And here we go. Now we're going to want to make our Anki cards look a little bit nicer. You can do this yourself, or you can just download the Refold Sentence Mining note type in the description below and get this. You can just double click on it or import file, find it in your system, and then hit select. It's going to import. Make sure that you import any deck presets here, and then just hit import. And now you can just delete this deck right now. It just imported everything that we needed. Our next step is to create a new deck to put our mined cards into. So let's call this Spanish Sentence Mining. Now we should set the options to be the Refold preset, This just sets a bunch of settings for you so that you don't have to worry about it, and make sure you hit save. And now you might actually want to put multiple decks into one folder if you already have them like this. So for example, in this case, I'm pretending I'm learning Spanish. So you could say Spanish learning, or however you want to do it. And then you can actually, let's set this first. So options, and then we'll set this to folder, which is also part of that import. And then we'll just drag the other decks into there. And then we have this sort of nested section. And now every day you can just study this deck, and it will be all of the sub decks below, allowing you to be efficient and organized. So that's Anki all set up and ready to go. If you haven't restarted it yet, make sure you do that now, but I'm just going to keep it minimized for now. The next thing we're going to set up is actually ASB Player. This is an extension available for Chromium-based browsers, so something like Brave or Chromium, or if you really need, Google Chrome, which is what I'm going to be using since I already use Chromium and Brave on other parts of my computer. Whatever it is, go to the Chrome Web Store and then search for ASB Player. There it is. Go to this page, hit Add to Chrome, then Add Extension. Now I'm going to pin it by clicking here and then the pin. And now we have to set up a few settings to make sure it can talk to Anki. So if you already have Anki open, it should be connected here and you can see the things in your Anki. If not, make sure Anki's open and then try reloading. And then we're going to want to select our sentence mining deck. There we go. And now we imported a couple of different refilled sentence miner note types. There are 3 different options here. This is up to you. It's up to you which one you do, but they're all very, very similar. The word only will just put the word only on the front. The sentence one will put the sentence and the word on the front, and the sentence hidden will be the exact same, but the sentence is hidden by default and you have to click to show it. If you need help choosing, I would recommend word only for more advanced learners, sentence hidden for more intermediate learners, and sentence for a slightly more beginner, but it's up to you. So I'm going to choose the sentence one for now. Everything else is the same regardless. So the sentence field, for example, we're going to want to make example sentence. Definition field should be definition 1. Word field should be word. Audio is actually sentence audio. Image field, image, and then source field and URL field, we just leave empty. And that is that there. So make sure you match all those settings to mine. And then you can come down to MISC here and turn on auto copy current subtitle to clipboard. This is just a useful thing. It'll just basically automatically Control-C everything that you have on a subtitle file. And then the last thing that we want to do is to change the keyboard shortcuts. So click on keyboard shortcuts and then any of these little pencils, which will bring up this page in your Chrome settings. And now the only one we actually care about is this final one here, update last created Anki card. And then also we can just leave this one alone. So I'm actually going to remove these 2 shortcuts by clicking here and then somewhere else, clicking here, somewhere else. And now you want to set your final shortcut, this update last Anki card, to be something easy for you to press. I'm going to do Control-Shift-X because it's really easy to do with my fingers right there. And that's what I'm used to. But you can choose whatever it is as long as your computer is not already using that shortcut for something else. And that's pretty much everything for ASB Player. You're now ready to go. If you want, you can play around with like the subtitle appearance by making the subs bigger or thicker or whatever you'd like, but that's totally up to you. Okay, now the last thing we have to do is choose how we're going to set up our Anki cards. There are 2 good options for this, VocabCiv and Yomi-chan. Both of them have ups and downs. VocabCiv is a little bit easier to get installed and running, however, it doesn't run on a lot of computers. If you have a Mac, for example, it might just not function at all. I'm going to cover both of them as easily as I can, but you've been warned. Let's start with getting VocabCiv though. We'll start by going to their GitHub and then going into the releases over here on the side. This link will be in the description. And then scrolling down to find the version that works for your computer. There's the one for Linux here, which is the app image. Mac OS has 2 versions, one for the ARM and one for the Intel version, and then the Windows version. You should just be able to download this file by clicking on it and then opening it like any other program that you would install on your computer. Once you've got it downloaded and ready to go, you should see it a little bit like this. And all you got to do is configure some options. So hit configure here and then choose your target language. In my case, I already have Czech selected, but let's just, for the sake of argument, pretend I'm learning Dutch. You can leave most of these the same. If you have a dictionary that you like to use online, you can paste that here with the at representing where the word will go in the URL. Then go to sources and you can choose which dictionaries you want to use. So I think the defaults are Wiktionary and Google Translate. I like to have Google Translate for Czech because it's more likely to have things. And I just leave off the pronunciation sources for Czech because there's not that many and I just find it a little bit annoying. But if you'd like, you can add it by dragging it over just like that. I don't like it personally. In processing, you probably don't need to do much here. It's probably just fine as it is. But Anki is where the magic comes in. So we want to make sure we have the Anki Connect API like this. That's all normal. And then we're going to want to select that sentence mining deck that we set up. So I set it to Spanish sentence mining, which doesn't make sense because I put Dutch here, but sake of argument, you know. Now, make sure you choose the note type that you want. Remember, I chose sentence earlier in the video. And then we want to make sure that these match. They should, by default, match for you, except for this pronunciation wants to be word audio in this case, because if you do have audio from VocabSieve, it's going to be for the word, not for the sentence. But everything else looks fine. There's no other settings you really need to worry about unless you want to make the text on the interface a little bit larger or smaller, but that's all we're going to touch for now. And so now, whenever something is copied on your computer, so if I grab some text from over here, for example, and I copy it, you see that it pops up right over here immediately. Then, to look up a word, you just double click on it. However, it does look like it pops up as a Dutch word here. And so that's exactly what's going to happen. And then whenever you want to add a note, you could, or that's adding an Anki card, you can do Control Shift or just press the button down here. And there you go. So now if I go back to a Czech TV show, we can see that it automatically is copying the subtitles as they come across. And then if I double click on something, it's going to look it up. And so in this case, it found the word. And let's say I want to save it. So I hit Control S, or I'll just click here for now. And then I come over to this, to my Chromium here, and then I'm going to do Control Shift X.
Přijde ti vtip.
So if we check our Anki now, we see there's one card in the Spanish sentence mining. And I click in here and I hit Browse. We see that it's exactly the card that I just made. That's the setup for VocabSieve and ASB Player. All right, now it's time to look at Yomitan, which is the spiritual successor to Yomi-Chan. So we're going to go to this page on the Google Chrome Web Store and hit Add to Chrome, then Add Extension. And then when it's done installing, it will pop up, and there we go. And that's the easy part. So now I'm going to pin this again to have easy access. Now we have to set up a few other things because there's no dictionaries by default. The first thing you'll want to do is choose your language here. Let's do Chinese, or Mandarin, because that's a good example. And now we want to go up here to the actual extension and click on this cog, which will bring us to the settings. And now, since we already set our language, that's fine. We're going to come down to this exclamation mark where it says configure installed and enabled dictionaries, because we don't have any dictionaries yet. So I'm going to click on this link here. I'm opening it in a new tab. And now this is the sort of harder part. We have to find the dictionary we want to use, download it, bring it into the program, and all that. If you're learning Japanese, there's a bunch of good options here. If you're learning some other popular languages for Yomitan, such as Cantonese or Mandarin, which is what I'm actually going to come back later, then you can use those here. But if you're learning any other language, you're going to want to click here on this KTY to look at the huge list of dictionaries that are available. Not all of them are the best because they have a lot of them, but many of them are quite good. So again, I just opened up this GitHub page and I'm going to go to releases here. This is the most recent release. And I scroll down and we'll see there are quite a few different options here. And they're all labeled with the 2-letter code for the language. So for example, here's the Russian-English one, Russian-Spanish with the IPA, Russian-Spanish without IPA. There's a ton of different options here. And so just to download things, you just click on it like that and it will download up here. That downloads that. There we go. And so these are both just in my downloads folder. Now I have my dictionary. I'm going to import. So now it's importing. Let's reload the page. And there we go. This over here on the side is the test. If this word is popping up with the dictionary here, that means that you're doing a good job. It's working. So now if I open up Chinese Wikipedia, then we can actually, or even just here, I think, yeah, we can see that it's already picking up words, and I can look up the name of something. So I'm hovering over and holding shift, by the way. And so this long word is the Wikimedia Foundation, right there. And so now we know that it's working. But we have a few more things to do before we're totally ready to go. The first thing is that we're going to want to scroll down until we see Anki, or just click Anki over here. And we're going to want to enable the Anki integration. And there we go. It's connected. That's because I have Anki open on my computer still. And this is the default Anki Connect address. And now you can leave this card tags the same, but we're going to want to configure the Anki card format. The deck, again, is we're going to want to choose the sentence mining one. And the model, I don't know why it's called model. This is just the note type, should, again, be sentence, since that's what we're choosing. And so now we want to set a couple of these. The definitions should be glossary first brief. And then the example sentence should be sentence. There's a bunch of different things in here, and it's kind of confusing, but you can ignore pretty much everything else. We'll deal with the other stuff in either by studying with Anki or through ASB Player. So now I hit close, and we see here that we have this little green plus now. That means that things have worked. Good job. Actually, now that I'm hovering over it, you can also see, I hope, yeah, oh, okay, I just realized that my face is covering this. I apologize. So I'll come back here. But now if I hover over something, we have this little plus here. That means add to Anki, and we can just hit Alt-E. So if I hit Alt-E on the keyboard, it adds it to Anki. So let's just double check that. And now we see that there's one card in here. I hit Browse, and we see there it is. We don't have any audio or anything because we're not using a piece of media, but let's look at that for example's sake. Okay, so here I have a piece of media that has subtitles. I'm going to load them in with Control-Shift-F on ASB Player. So there I chose that and hit OK. And so now we see them here, and if I hold Shift down, it'll show up with Yomi-chan, or Yomi-tan, rather. So now if let's say I want to mine this word, and so I hover over it, and I hit the little plus, or Alt-E, so let's do that. And then I hit Control-Shift-X.
大家好，欢迎来到聊聊东西，我们聊东西文。
It will record the audio, and also have to allow the copying. It'll record the audio for the sentence card. And so now we see there are two cards. That one test card I made and this one that I just did. And so this word here is what I just did to welcome a visitor or newcomer. So if I hit preview, we'll see this is the word, this is the sentence. And then if I
大家好，欢迎来到聊聊东西，我们聊东。
There we go. And now we have everything that we need. We even have an image, although these images aren't very interesting since it's a podcast. But that is the entire setup for Yomi-tan, which should work for any language that you find a dictionary for. And so there you go. Now you have a way to easily mine sentences with audio and images by just pressing a couple of buttons. However, that's not quite everything for this video. I do have a couple of optional additional resources that you can use. The first is called HyperTTS, which makes it really easy to add generated voices to your Anki cards. This is a great tool for if you're mining from a lot of text, so reading just books or web pages, or you don't want to use the audio from your media for whatever reason. So we're going to go back into Anki, and we're going to grab this code and add it to our add-ons. Get add-ons, paste, okay. It's going to load. There we go. And it tells us we have to restart because it doesn't know. So I'll do that right now. And there we go. Now, if I click Tools, we see I have a couple of new options. HyperTTS, Services Configuration. So I'll click that here. So you have a couple of different options. You can either sign up for the free trial, or you can sign up for $5 per month to generate basically unlimited voices. Or if you want, you can just click Enable All Free Services, and that will work as well. When you sign up for either of these, you're going to want to hit Enter API key and paste this long string of things that you find in your email here, and then it will load with all of everything that you have to offer. I'm going to paste in one now, but I don't want you to see it. And so now I put in my API key, and I can now just hit save. And to be clear, you can use all of the free services without paying anything. So now that you have that, you're going to want to set up what's called a preset. So you're going to go into your deck that you want to do this for, and then click Browse, which will open this window. And then you have a couple of new buttons here. There's a few ways to do this, but I would recommend first just pressing this on one of the cards that you want to do it for. So let's pretend like we want audio for this word that we got from Wikipedia. So I'm going to click here, and I'm going to click on Add Rule, and then New Preset, okay, which is going to open this. So let's rename this to okay. And now we're going to want to set the source. So where is this pulling the words from? What is it reading aloud? And I'm reading from example sentence. So if I look over here, this is example sentence. Get out of the way. And then we're going to hit target and go to sentence audio. Great. Nothing else here matters. And now we see that it's this generating audio for this, and it's targeting the sentence down here. Now I go to the voice selection, and then, oh God, I don't know if this is traditional or simplified. I'm going to guess that it's traditional or simplified, because I think that's more common nowadays. I'm not a Chinese learner, I'm sorry. And so now we have a bunch of different voices here. If you're paying, then you'll have a ton of different options. I definitely recommend 11 Labs for longer sentences and Azure for single words. And so you can click on anybody here and then just play audio sample, and it will load this sentence.
Wikipedia R 和维基百科标志是维基媒体基金会的注册商标。
Thank you. That voice sounds fine enough for me, so I'm going to hit save and close, which is going to save this note type. And so now I can save and close here. So now on any card, I can hit this little guy here.
大家好，欢迎来到聊聊东西。
And there we go. It has audio. The quality of the audio can vary because this is TTS, and so use it however makes sense for you. If you want to do a bunch of cards at once, select all of them here, and then click Hyper TTS up here, and then hit Add Audio Collection, which is going to load, and then you can either open the same preset that you made, and then it will be everything's exactly the same. So example sentence, audio, and this is the same voice selected. Or you can just make a new one here, and you can rename it to something new for whatever you want, and do the exact same process of choosing what the source field is. So for example, maybe word, and then the target is word audio, and then the voice we set to Chinese simplified, and then we choose an Azure voice, let's say. Let's do this guy. We click on a note to play a sample. I don't know any Chinese, so it sounds fine to me. Apply to notes, and it will go through all of the notes that you selected, and now you can hit close. And you probably want to save your preset so that you can use it later in the future. And now both of these cards have word audio as well. So if I preview them, we'll hear that on the front. And so that is how you use Hyper TTS to add audio to any of your Anki cards. And finally, I want to cover how to make things a little bit more streamlined by connecting your setup to a controller or even just some keyboard shortcuts to make your life a little bit easier. The simplest method is to get some kind of controller, either like this or a game controller, and connect it up to various keys on your keyboard. So in my case, I have a tool called Anti-Micro-X, also available for Windows, which is connecting this controller up to various inputs on my keyboard. So when I press this button, you'll see what's actually being pressed, and you see that the A is acting like a space, and B is acting like the number 1. I also have the start key being D to go back to my deck. That's another Anki shortcut, and that's great for Anki. Like I said, I use Anti-Micro-X, which is good for Windows or Linux, but if you're on Mac OS, you should try something like Enjoyable. However, I can't tell you if it actually works great or not because I don't have a Mac computer. But if you want to get a little bit fancier with your setup, you can set up simple scripts that actually run a series of commands in a row. So, for example, this is the script that I use for mining my cards. What it does is switches to vocabciv, then presses Control S, then switches to Chromium, and then presses Control-Shift-X to mine the audio. This means that I don't have to worry about where my mouse is or what's focused. It'll automatically focus on the right thing for me. All I got to do is press Start here on my controller because I have it set up to do that when I press Start. So on pressing Start, it executes sentencemine.sh, which is this. If you're interested in doing this yourself, you will have to do a little bit of hacking and setup, but I can give you a few tips. First, you'll need something that can take actions and do this for you. On Linux, I use bash scripts and xdotool to make the actions for me, and then, like I said, Anti-Micro-X to connect it to my controller. On Windows, you can use AutoHotkey, and Mac users can use the default script editor, I think. My next tip is to use ChatGPT or other AI chatbots for this. They're actually quite good at writing code, and this is just simple code. However, it's still not perfect, so don't trust it and try to use your general intuition to make sure that something makes sense. My next tip is to add timeouts. If you allow a script to do something potentially forever if it can't find an option, that can possibly lock up your computer and be annoying to stop. Don't ask me how I know this, it's definitely not personal experience. And the last tip for doing things like this is to think like a computer. Computers are very good at following exactly what you tell it to do to the very single letter. For example, if you tell it to press a button, it might press that button for 0.001 seconds because that's the shortest amount of time that it can, and that's what it said to do. But this might not register in other programs, so keep things like that in mind. Down in the description, I'll link an unscripted and secret video where I talk through my whole setup to get this working on my computer so that you can maybe pull a few tips and tricks from that. But once you get things set up and going, it can be really smooth and pretty fun. Watching TV shows with this is really comfortable because it's nice and compact and feels a little bit more like a video game. Okay, I think that's enough for this video. I'm sorry that it's so down and dirty technical, but that's kind of the reality for sentence mining in 2024. Hopefully there are more good plug-and-play options in the future that I can just recommend for you to use. If you're not super technically inclined but you made it this far, first, thanks for watching, and maybe you might enjoy trying this out as an interesting project. I'm sure you'll learn a bunch of new things. Anyway, thank you all so much for watching. I really enjoyed making this video, and I hope that you enjoyed it and find it useful. If you did, make sure to leave a comment below, and a thumbs up would be appreciated. If you have any questions, leave them in the Refold Discord server in the Tech and Tools channel. That's the most likely place to get a good response. Have a fantastic rest of your day, and as always, happy immersing. Yeah, that last section just best spot.